Everybody, this is History in a Drink, and we're actually normally we're from the world famous Baha'i Hut, but we've got a little bit of a switch out tonight. Being Halloween craziness, I'm just chalking it up to that, but the Baha'i Hut was unavailable, so we're actually from an undisclosed secret location on this Halloween night. So I'm Shawn.
And I'm Frank, and tonight we're going to be visiting Haiti, and the rum that we're going to talk about is rum Barbancourt.
Yep.
Unfortunately, because of the short notice, we weren't able to actually get rum Barbancourt, so we had to fill in with a different one.
Exactly.
But our drink tonight is from the rum Barbancourt site, which is called a Champ de Mars.
Yep.
And it is a nice red drink, and it has rum in it.
Yep.
And so it calls for maraschino liqueur, which we didn't have either, but I had Kirschwater from my friend Kevin, and this is all the way from Austria that he sent it to me.
Kind of tastes like maraschino cherries.
Yep.
Yep.
And then we have grenadine and lime juice in it, and it's quite yummy.
Absolutely delicious. So, really good. So Barbancourt rum is actually a Haitian rum. Mm-hmm. And as we kind of have talked about in past episodes, it's actually a rhum, which is that R-H-U-M.
Right.
Pronounced rum as well. But now there's rhum.
Aricole.
Now that specifically has to come from
Martinique.
Yeah. So that's what makes that. But it still is a rhum because instead of being actually made from molasses, which is a byproduct of sugar, that's what gets fermented and made into the rum. It's actually fermented straight from the sugar cane itself. So that's what makes a rhum. It gives it a kind of a more earthy, kind of a richer flavor almost.
Yeah, I would say that definitely that richer flavor to it, and it doesn't have like a little burnt taste behind it either.
Correct.
From the molasses.
Yeah. And Barbancourt rum, it actually is over 150 years old. Started back in the 1860s, and it's still producing obviously rum today in Haiti. And actually, they were closed down for about 6 months when the Haitian earthquake in 2010.
Yeah, and it did significant damage to their rick houses, so they lost a lot of rum that they were aging, and so there's going to be a gap in their rum that they're going to have. They probably have already hit that gap.
Yeah.
But I know their prices went up for a while because of that. One of the other things that's really interesting about this rum as well is this has been a family-run business. And when I was looking at the list of CEOs, they've only had like 6 CEOs in 150 years.
Because it's their entire lifetime.
Yeah.
So the entire thing, because it stays within the family.
Yeah. And right now it's being run by, I think, the original owner's great-great-granddaughter.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of really fascinating to see that they have stayed. And even after the revolution in 1803, well, they came after that, but to be there and part of it, that culture.
And they did move in the early 1900s, back in the 1920s, actually, they moved operations to where almost right in the middle of all the sugarcane fields in Haiti. So, I mean, they're right in the middle of where it's all happening and it's still located there today. So,
yeah, which makes a total sense.
Yep. And you can actually, especially here in America, all of us, we can order that, or you can also get that from like Total Wine or one of the others.
Yeah, Total Wine and Norman's.
Yeah, you gotta kind of search for it, but well worth the search.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk a little bit about voodoo. So we're in Haiti.
Ooh, okay.
Now, just like Haiti being a French colony tied to Martinique for the room, it is also tied to with the voodoo.
Another French Louisiana, I think New Orleans, and I think that area right there. Okay.
Yeah, and so voodoo was a huge religion for the Americans that were brought over here.
And how appropriate when I think voodoo, I think, the spirits and the skeletons, and I think the Mardi Gras and everything going along with voodoo.
Yeah, but what's interesting is voodoo actually is started as an idea of drumming and dancing that came from the West African cultures. So when we look at slavery, over 100 different African cultures had people enslaved and sent to the Americas. So you have this huge blending of all these different cultures together, and they may have hated each other back there, but they had no choice but to live with each other and they began to create culture because that was the only thing that they had was.
And obviously not only the African cultures, but then you also had Europeans coming in. You had,
Yep.
had everything. And then we get some of the Roman Catholicism. We get even some of the Celtic religion and everything else along with it too.
Yeah. So the big overall god in voodoo is Bonde. And he is like a clockwork god, made it and just leaves it alone, doesn't have anything to do with it. And the Iwas, which are sometimes equated to be like angels.
Okay.
They're the go-between because, you think of...
Like angels or saints or like...
Well,
more
angels coming down to talk from the God above.
Okay.
But they also are sometimes tied with our Catholic saints.
Gotcha.
Especially in New Orleans, because we see that it is kind of symbiotic, where Catholicism and voodoo kind of live together and people practice both at the same time. But back in the 1900s, when voodoo was really big in New Orleans, they had to really hide because it was looked at as witchcraft and
kind of
demon worship and all of that. Okay. So especially once the United States took over and you had lots of Protestants from New England and stuff coming down there.
So you said Iwas. Iwas are kind of like these, almost reminds me of two, kind of like the Greek and Roman gods, where you have like a god of something.
Exactly. Yep. And they're divided into families as well.
Yep.
It's extremely complicated. And the same character can have different roles and stuff like that and be looked at in different ways. But as I said, we see that the culture of voodoo comes from three major West African peoples. It comes from the Yoruba, it comes from the Fon, and it comes from the Congo.
Okay.
And those are the Yoruba and the Fon are in close to modern day Benin.
Okay.
And Nigeria. And then the Congo is that heart of Africa.
Sure.
So it's just interesting to see how they incorporate all these other religions into it, especially the French Catholicism, but especially in Haitian voodoo, they also bring elements of Freemasonry into it as well.
Okay.
Into their rituals.
Wow. All right.
So the Freemasons are known for having elaborate rituals and stuff like that, and it crosses cultures. It's not like,
but there's even, like I said, Egyptian references. There's I mean all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So it's really is a world religion.
Yeah. So as we look at these gods, they're the ones who kind of influence what voodoo is like, and who are the priests and priestesses, because they don't really have a hierarchy or any set creed or sacred text that you can do. It's mostly through oral tradition that this gets passed down. So anybody can really kind of be a priest or a priestess, as long as they get a following.
Sure.
And people believe that they are actually able to communicate with these other gods.
The Iwas.
Yep. So our first one we want to look at is Papa Legba. And he's kind of the old man of the culture. He's actually represented as an old man with a straw hat and tattered clothes with a cane walking.
Yep.
With the dog always with him.
Okay.
And he wears red and black, and he symbolizes that crossroads between the spirit world and our world.
Okay.
And
kind of the gatekeeper almost.
Yeah. He's looked at as that and as the trickster. Every religion seems to have a trickster in it that does stuff, like Loki.
Correct.
In Norse mythology. But he's tied to actually three different saints, depending on his role. That
in the Roman Catholicism side of things,
right?
Okay.
So Saint Lazarus, Saint Anthony, but then the one I think we all can really understand with that idea of the crossroads is Saint Peter
at the gates.
Yeah,
gotcha. Okay.
So you might see in the voodoo shops candles of all three of those saints in the area that they have their altar for Papa Legba.
Gotcha. Because that is interchangeable in that Roman Catholicism of those, lighting a candle for your saint. You're lighting it for your Iwa as well.
Yeah, because they had you have an altar and you worship them, and you make sacrifices of lots of different things, and
depending on what that person wants.
Exactly. So it can be crops or it can be animals.
Something sacred to you.
Yeah. Well, something that I think is the best one is rum.
Absolutely.
So, most of them, that was one of the things that they gave to them. So then we have Madame Brigette.
So this is a female.
Yep. And
she's an Iowa as well.
Of the death and underworld.
Okay.
All right. And she's going to be the consort to Baron Samedi, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
Sure.
Her image is a black rooster, which is kind of interesting instead of something.
Have a male rooster with a female.
Yeah. Now, this one was really interesting because the way that she's portrayed is as a light-skinned woman with red hair. When we think about red hair, we don't think about Africans having natural red hair. No, we think about
Scottish and Irish.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's what I read about is there were a lot of Irish and Scottish indentured servants who were working in the fields with
and they would have been slaves. Right alongside. Exactly.
Yeah. And so they shared stuff, and it very much sounds like the Celtic goddess Brigade.
Gotcha. So once again, we see this blending of different
cultures and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have Baron Samedi, who is, to me, probably the one that everybody has seen because he's really kind of in pop culture a lot.
Okay.
He's the god of death and the keeper of cemeteries.
Okay.
And he's important because he's the one who lets your soul go into the spirit world. He's the only one who can let the soul go there. So if you don't meet him, you're stuck in this world.
Gotcha. And how is he portrayed?
He's portrayed as kind of like a skeleton.
Okay.
Wearing a top hat.
Oh, okay. That's a real common things I always think about.
And then like a formal tails jacket for
exactly. Like he's going to a party or whatever, but always has a skeleton. You see that in the New Orleans in like the Mardi Gras parades and the things. I think some movies too.
Yeah. He's the one that I know him in is Live and Let Die, one of the James Bond movies.
Correct.
That takes place in the Caribbean.
In Haiti, actually.
No, it's there's a fake little island that they make, but it's supposed to be like Haiti. So he also wears dark glasses, and he is also the one that can communicate with your ancestors that are long dead. So when you need advice and stuff like that, or you need help, you can call on him to do that. Now, my understanding is he doesn't do anything for free. So there's always has to be a price to pay.
Exactly.
All right. And so he's represented by Saint Gerard and Saint Expedite, which I'm not familiar with that. I'm going to have to go and look that one up. I just didn't have time to do that today.
I think Expedite gets things done for you quickly.
Yeah.
It's the whole Saint Expedite.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Sure. All right. Our next one is Zuli.
So it's another
Iowa. Okay. And she is the Iowa of beauty and love. And she's tied to the Christian Lady of Sorrow.
Okay.
And also the Black Madonna.
Okay.
So in Poland, they have the Black Madonna.
Yep.
And so it's just kind of an interesting thing. And she's really representative of fertility and motherhood and all of that.
Okay.
Then we go on to one that is unique because this is a character that is, or an Iowa that's brought from Yoruba culture itself.
Okay. That's from the African culture.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he is the Iowa of warriors, blacksmiths, the wheel of justice. Now, what I found about him that was interesting is they really talked about sacrifices to him, and the sacrifices to him were to be meat.
So he wants, he's more of that primal that.
Exactly. And when we think about voodoo, we think about ritual sacrifice of chickens.
Killing the roosters, exactly.
Yeah. And so that's what they mostly do is roosters, because he wants male animals, not female animals.
Okay.
So roosters and dogs are the two most common things. And then they have to cook the meat too.
Okay.
For him. And
but they're not consuming it. They're cooking it to give it a sacrifice.
Exactly. None of the stuff that they put on the altars is consumed. It's kind of bad luck to do that. Kind of like in one of my favorite sports movies. In Major League.
Jobu.
With Jobu when the pitcher steals his rum and then gets hit with the baseball bat.
Exactly right.
So
can't steal from Jobu.
Yep. And so he's represented by St. James and St. Philip.
Okay.
Now he also has a fondness for pretty women and for good
rum.
So he likes that.
So barbecue, pretty women, and good rum.
Yeah.
Cheers.
All right. And our last one that I want to talk about is Bala.
Okay.
And this one, it's represented by a giant serpent. And it is with Bondi is the one who created his coils wrapped by squeezing it together and stuff. And he's the keeper of knowledge and wisdom. And it's interesting because he's associated with St. Patrick.
St. Patrick of Irish faith is actually also, too, when you talk about being a serpent, chase the snakes out of Ireland.
Exactly.
And things too. So they seem to have these similar pairings.
Yeah.
So possibly not coincidences.
Yeah.
Yeah. You blend all these things together and people come together and they start adding up and
yeah,
no coincidence.
So these are just some of the Iowas that they have and who they go and worship. And so the last time I was in New Orleans, we did one of the voodoo tours and stuff like that. And we ended up at one of the voodoo shops. And in there, they had altars to each one of them in different places. And then you could buy stuff specific to them
I wanted for their pieces. Yeah.
So the candles were there.
Yeah.
Different gris.
And we saw specific things from, obviously we've been talking about Haiti, but from that Haiti voodoo, as it went to New Orleans and as those slaves traveled to New Orleans, they took that with them. And that's even more when it got combined with Catholicism.
Right. And so the voodoo that we see in New Orleans, it's either called New Orleans voodoo or Louisiana voodoo.
Yep.
It was very secretive, as we said before. And when you go and do the voodoo tours, most of them start in the cemeteries that were outside of the city walls.
Away from prying eyes, away from authority.
Exactly. Yep. And that's where the slaves and the free blacks could go and do what they wanted without their masters or anybody kind of knowing it.
But they could, even in their homes, they could still practice their religion by utilizing the Catholic version of their stuff.
Exactly. And I was reading, there was a bunch of articles that talk about lots of people practice the two of them interchangeably. Roman Catholicism and voodoo.
Yeah.
So
Roman Catholicism? No, Roman Catholicism.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's just Sacramento.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, there's two big holidays in the 1900s of voodoo.
Okay.
So the one was St. John's Eve, which was the 23rd of June.
Okay.
And they had huge celebrations on the shores of Lake Pontchartrain.
Okay. Which once again was on the outskirts of town. So kind of a ways. So.
And then the other big one is actually tomorrow. Oh. All Saints Day.
All Saints Day, day after Halloween.
Yeah.
So that was the other.
That's their other big one that they did. And that brings us to what I want to kind of end with is probably the most famous voodoo practitioner
in New Orleans,
realistically in the United States, of Marie Laveau.
Madame Laveau.
So she was a priestess, and what I kind of see her as is the keeper of secrets. Okay. And what it said about her early life is she worked in a beauty salon.
All right. In New Orleans, exactly. For all the high society,
and so she would hear all the gossip that was going on, and she memorized it, read it, wrote it down, whatever, so she could keep it. And it was also she paid slaves and servants for any gossip and stuff that she would do.
Kind of sounds very Game of Thrones-ish, like the spider in Game of Thrones.
Right.
She would know what was going on. Had her secret keepers.
Yeah. And those secrets she would then share bits and pieces of during sessions where she was a clairvoyant.
That they just came to her and that they were passed on from the Iowas. And so it was a more religious experience.
Yeah, exactly. And especially in the late 1800s, seances and all of that kind of stuff became extremely popular.
Yeah, into the 1920s. Even.
Right, yeah. So we see that she dies in 1881.
Yep.
So it's before, she's like kind of at the beginning of it. And I think a lot of her influence is what kind of drew it and made it go farther. Now, she is huge in pop culture.
Yeah.
There are tons of books about her.
Yep.
There's music about her. She's referenced in tons of songs.
I remember visiting New Orleans and going to her grave and actually seeing there's still today lots of altars and lots of things put down in her grave in New Orleans.
So today, her grave you can't get to unless you are escorted there because of so much vandalism and people wanting to take pieces of it and stuff like that. And so she's in pop culture with that. There's a musical about her and all of that. So it's really kind of interesting. So if you get to go to New Orleans, you definitely want to go and do one of the voodoo tours. It was a fun time.
Yep.
And the lady who was our tour guide, she was a voodoo practitioner herself.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had all this other knowledge she was sharing and stuff like that. So, and then you can get your little gree-gree, which are these little amulet bags that they have that are for like good luck. And
exactly. They combine
fertility.
things from different herbs to different little metals to coins to favors.
So that's what I have for us today.
Excellent. So very cool voodoo, and it's tracing and it's tied to Haiti and also to Barbancourt rum.
Yeah.
So we have our little history and drink tonight. Thank you guys for joining us. Like I said, we wish we were at the Baja tonight, but they had some issues and we're there. We are planning on being back next week. Where are we traveling to next week?
Next week, I think we are
Jamaica?
going. No, I think we're going to Nicaragua.
Oh, Nicaragua, and that means Florida
Florida
Cana, which is one of my favorite rums of all. So I cannot wait to talk about that.
Yep. So that's where we're going next.
Okay.
And so enjoy this episode, and please, since we didn't do trivia, I still had trivia for tonight, and I'm going to be putting that up on the Trivia in the Tropics podcast. So
and for anybody who's watching who is a practitioner of voodoo, tomorrow with All Saints Day, make sure that Shawn and Frank are in your good gree bags and make sure we take care of us and we're all good. So
all right, enjoy.
Have a